Hi friends, and a happy Monday. I hope you had a fabulous weekend. It was a hot one for a lot of people in the West, which we'll talk all about coming up. We want to thank you so much for being with us today. I'm meteorologist Ashley Ruiz, and welcome to Weather Out West. This is the hour-long show every day, at least during the work week, where we showcase what's happening weather-wise across the western United States, and you're going to find forecasts from our meteorologist in the PNW to the Mountain West, California to Arizona and the desert Southwest. But today, we want to start in Portland, Oregon, where they're experiencing the hottest days so far this summer, but the heat's not going to stick around for much longer. Rod Hill has all the details from Portland.
From the hot Rose City of Portland, I'm meteorologist Rod Hill. Our big story is the hot weather. Yesterday, Sunday, for the very first time, we had 100-degree temperatures, very first time this summer, up and down the Willamette Valley. Our capital city of Salem hit 101. PDX, the Portland airport, stopped at 99. And we think on this Monday, temperatures will be very similar. So here's the way the heat map looks from our friends at the Weather Service. Extreme heat warning, meaning your city could hit 100 degrees today. This is up from Cottage Grove, which is just south of Eugene, up through Portland, up into Clark County, and then through the gorge, including Hood River and the Dalles, and then down into Central Oregon, including our resort areas of Bend, and then up into Redmond and Madras. The orange areas on the map, which is Kelso, Longview, Woodland, Cowlitz County, and parts of the Coast Range, under a heat advisory for temperatures well up into the 90s, but no realistic chance of making it to 100 degrees. So the valley range on this Monday, anywhere from at least 95 to as hot as 102. The winds stay cool down. Again, we have the heat warnings extended through the day tomorrow, so it's going to be a 3-day event. Yesterday was day one, and here's what we did. Salem hit 101, McMinnville had the same, Hillsboro hit 100 degrees, PDX 99, which was not a record, but is now the warmest day we have had so far this year. Vancouver had 99 as well. And at the coast, we thought it would be sunny and we'd have some spots in the 80s, and Astoria warmed up to 82 degrees. So no records so far. You know, we've been having hot enough summers the last couple of decades mixed with the old records that you really have to get up into the hundreds to be in record territory for the most part this time of the year. Yesterday we hit 99, but the record 107 and back in 1981 stands. Today 99. Now the record today is 102 back in the summer of 1977. That is at least a potential. So we'll keep an eye on that record for today. And then tomorrow, 96, maybe we're 97 or 98, but the record's 104. I don't believe that will be in play, and that's also in the hot August of 1977. Some live cameras for you. Again, the coast is sunny. Had some shallow fog along our beaches this morning. 70s to some low 80s today. Folks out enjoying. So a bit of a cool zone overall for Oregon. This is our Snook Winds Casino Resort camera in Lincoln City. And you would assume it would be hotter, excuse me, not as hot up on the mountain as we look at the snow. 6,000 feet early this morning, 70 degrees. Now, Timberline Lodge hit 80 yesterday. A lot cooler than Portland's 99. Could be 83, 84 up there today, and past level temperatures at 4,000 feet over the Cascades, they could hit 90. So if you are going up to the high country to recreate, still going to be hot. Make sure you have plenty of sunscreen, a hat, and of course, lots of water if you're doing some hiking. Here's our state capital this morning. Again, it was 101 in Salem yesterday and expected to crack 100 degrees again today. There is the clear blue sky over downtown Portland. So the forecast is obviously all about the numbers. Pacific City today, 74 up in Astoria. Could be back-to-back 80-degree days. This shows 80. In the valley, back up to 100 or better. Latest modeling goes 102 out in wine country in McMinnville, 102 in Salem, and 101 down at Oregon State University in Corvallis. Southwest Washington numbers generally shy of 100, although 100 is possible. I mean, the science isn't that exact. This shows Battleground 99 and Vancouver at 99. Here's Portland 7-day. 2 more days of the impact alert for the hot weather. 99 today, 96 tomorrow. And then high confidence that Wednesday's our cool down. In fact, only 82. Morning clouds on Thursday. We drop it to 75. Now we're back into the below normal temperature pattern. Chance of rain developing Friday. And right now, Saturday looks to be likely rain, widespread. Maybe a quarter of an inch or more, and then dry and 77 on Sunday.
The rain, especially where we have some really, really extreme drought conditions. Always a welcome sight. Thanks, Rod. So now it's time to head to Spokane, Washington, where our weather team out there, they issued a weather impact alert day as well because of some of the heat. Let's check in.
I'm meteorologist Thomas Patrick, live in Spokane Valley, Washington this morning on what is going to be an incredibly hot day for Eastern Washington and the inland Northwest. In fact, could rival some of our hottest days of the summer season. And as obviously I'm facing the sunshine in this direction, I can feel that heat, that direct sunlight just beating on me at the moment. But it's not just that. Once that sun even gets higher in the sky, being in a location like this where I'm in like this parking lot with the freshly laid blacktop, I mean, that black surface just soaks up the heat so efficiently. And at some point, it's just gonna start radiating from beneath my feet. So if I had to be out here for not even just like an hour or two, I think if I had to stand in this spot for 20 minutes, I'd probably start to fry pretty easily. So it's obviously very important on a day like today for anybody that does have to be outside and work in these hot conditions that you stay cool however you can by drinking plenty of fluids and water, also making sure you're getting breaks, especially inside where there's air conditioning to cool off that internal body temperature. Today's gonna be one of our hottest days so far this summer, as our temperatures will climb all the way to the mid 90s. And with that being said, we do have a weather impact alert day for Eastern Washington and the surrounding areas. Temperatures at minimum 94 degrees. I think the hottest spots, especially in central and southern Washington, will likely push about 104 for these next 2 days in a row, actually. These first 2 days of the week will be the hottest 2 days, and that is when the heat advisory goes to. It kicks in as of noon today and goes all the way till 8 p.m. on Tuesday. You see the orange shaded areas, that for eastern and central Washington, as well as North Idaho. Temperatures largely between that 94 and 100 degree mark. I think 100 might be a bit of a stretch for most, but it's central and southern Washington that'll get the worst of it. It's the Tri-Cities area, Kennewick, Pasco, and Richland, that will be upwards of about 104 degrees for the next 2 days. They always run the hottest in Washington State and in the Columbia Basin region, so no surprise that they will be hotter than the Spokane area. And that extreme heat warning does extend through the I-84 corridor across northern Oregon as well. So at 96 degrees in Spokane, that is 10 degrees above average. Mentioned this at the end of July, is that this is generally speaking some of our hottest days of the year, hottest stretches. So to be in the mid 90s is not an excessive stretch of the imagination, but it still is pretty hot. Not quite a record high. That record stands at 101 for today. And we've actually not hit 100 so far this year. So a high temperature of 96 in Spokane, same in Davenport, and I was gonna say Coeur d'Alene, it got 95 for the forecast there, and 94 in Pullman. The triple digit heat, as you see, is near the central part of the state. Moses Lake at 101 and Richland at 104 degrees for today, and even a pinch hotter for tomorrow as well, as those temperatures will be at about 97 degrees for Spokane. That actually would match our hottest day of the year so far. A couple days back in July, back on July 13th and 30th, we hit 97 degrees. I'm forecasting that for this Tuesday afternoon. So that would be the third time at 97 exactly for Spokane. So we got a big ridge in the jet stream. That is going to keep that heat in place for 3 days here through Wednesday. When we get a cold front finally on Wednesday night, that is when the heat will start to break then, but it may come at a slight cost of some stronger winds. So we'll be monitoring Wednesday closely for the potential for red flag warnings or even higher fire danger for Eastern Washington. So stay tuned for that, but the focus today is on that high heat, as those temperatures are going to be in the mid 90s today and tomorrow.
That was Thomas Patrick in Spokane, Washington. And stick with us, because after the break, we're staying in Washington, but we'll head west to Seattle. The heat advisory is in effect for the greater Seattle area and much of western Washington, as high temperatures are expected to soar into the 80s and 90s. But just like Spokane, it's not going to last for very long. Here's Rich Marriott with the details.
Hi and happy Monday. I'm King 5 meteorologist Rich Marriott, and boy, it did heat up over the weekend. Those temperatures yesterday really shot up there. We're in the mid to upper 80s and near 90 degrees from Seattle southward, and it was a really warm Sunday afternoon to wrap up the weekend. It would have been a good weekend to be sitting out there at the marina in Bellingham, which is looking pretty nice today. They're probably still going to get into the low to mid 80s, even right there on the edge of the water. And as you move inland, a lot of places are going to be pushing that 90-degree mark, even in the northern counties. We're settling into a hot couple of days, and we're in first alert weather mode as a result of that. Take a look at Tacoma Tower Cam. You see a little bit of smoke haze out there. That's from that Bear Gulch fire, which continues to burn and produce smoke, but fortunately most of it is going up to the higher elevation. So at the surface, we've seen very little decrease in our air quality, which is definitely good news. Looking at our low temperatures this morning, it took forever for it to cool off. We were still in the low to mid 70s out at SEA after midnight last night, and they finally dropped down into the mid to upper 60s around the main urban heat islands there, Seattle, Everett, Tacoma, and over towards Bremerton, and only stayed there briefly for an hour or two before it started to warm up. In fact, checking mid-morning temperatures already back into the low to mid 70s, so very quickly warming up today, which is going to get us right back to those temperatures we had yesterday, maybe add a degree or two, and even warmer as we head towards tomorrow. Take a look at that first alert 7-day forecast. You can see we've got 2 hot days in a row, first alert weather days both today and tomorrow for those temperatures, which are hot for people who live in Puget Sound for sure. But we do see a major cool down as we head towards midweek. You can see we drop off 15 to 20 degrees in a lot of areas as we head towards Wednesday. So relief is in sight. You just have to be patient. In fact, we might even see a little bit of rain by the time we hit the end of the week. So first alert weather day today through tomorrow night at 10 p.m. basically because of the temperatures 80s to near 90 degrees today, and then tomorrow we'll see some low to mid 90s around the area, and having trouble cooling off overnight with those temperatures only dropping down into the 60s most spots, and it is affecting essentially all of western Washington unless you're right near the coast, the Strait, or up towards the San Juans, where it's going to be a lot more livable temperatures in those areas. We do have a National Weather Service heat advisory out for the same period of time there for western Washington. Also a heat advisory out for the east slopes of the Cascades, where they're looking at triple-digit temperatures. That one on the east side of the Cascades will continue through 8 p.m. on Tuesday evening. We do have some warm nights, and with that, though, pretty good to go out and do some observing, and we're seeing the Perseid meteor shower peak tomorrow night into Wednesday. The bad news with that is that normally it's a big producer, and it's usually the best viewing is after midnight. Unfortunately, we're just past the full moon. That's going to be rising about the time it starts to get dark, so that's going to interfere with the viewing. As we head towards the weekend, next weekend, as it starts to rise a little bit later, you might be able to get out before the moon rises in the late evening and get a chance to see some of those meteors that you wouldn't be seeing with the moon out. And we also have something else going on in the sky. If you get up early in the morning and go out and look towards the east, Jupiter and Venus are in conjunction when they get closest passage past each other as we head towards, well, it was this morning and again on Tuesday morning. They'll be about a degree apart, which is about twice the diameter of the moon, and they're the 2 brightest planets in the sky, so it's pretty nice shot to go out and take a look at, and that'll be anywhere from about, maybe 15 to 45 minutes before sunrise. You should be able to pick those out pretty easily. Take a look at that smoke forecast. You can see if we put that into motion, smoke stays pretty much right around that Bear Gulch fire there over at Lake Cushman and doesn't really spread out all that much. We are seeing a little bit of it visibly show up there, but not really affecting that air quality. In fact, we're expecting good air quality for most stations, but the places just downwind from there are going to pick up a little bit of a decrease into the moderate range, but just barely into the moderate range in those areas. So they should be in pretty good shape. And you can see we don't see any degradation. In fact, tomorrow we see even fewer stations dropping down into the moderate range. So overall for today, sunny and hot, temperatures in the 80s to low to maybe some mid 90s. Tomorrow will be our hottest day of the week, will be in the 80s to low to mid 90s. Not setting any records. The records are actually around 96 for out at SCA, and they should stay pretty much in the low 90s. Big drop off on Wednesday with mostly sunny skies, but those temperatures dropping down into the mid 70s for highs. A few more clouds on Thursday, and then Friday we actually get a front through here. That's going to give us a little light rain at times, not big quantities, but it should wet everybody down with temperatures getting into the mid 60s to near 70 degrees. Decreasing showers Saturday, and it looks like a partly sunny day Sunday, and highs over the weekend mostly in the mid 70s.
It's no surprise that the heat is impacting the interior Northwest as well, but the heat will linger for an extra day or so in Idaho compared to our friends in the greater Portland and Seattle area. Hector Mendoza breaks down the forecast details from Boise.
Hello, I'm Hector Mendoza out here at KTVB forecasting out of Boise, Idaho. And I did want to talk about some of the temperatures we're going to be seeing. But before we get there, I did want to show you guys a picture that we got posted on our Idaho Weather Watchers Facebook page that was posted at Hayden Lake here in Idaho, showing the beautiful sunset we saw there at the end of our Sunday, seeing a bunch of beautiful colors there, yellows, oranges, purples and blues up into the sky, and that reflected there on into the lake there. And then we see beautiful, beautiful just sort of silhouettes of some of those trees, just making for a very picturesque end of the day out in Hayden Lake. But temperatures yesterday got pretty warm, got into the low 90s, kind of warmer than what we had been seeing to wrap up the work week last week. And then into the weekend, we saw some warm temperatures into the low 90s, getting close to the triple digit temperatures there out in Ontario at 97 degrees, mid 80s in the Magic Valley, and out into the mountains, those low 80s is what we saw for most areas. Now, we'll continue to see some warmer afternoon temperatures today, intensifies into tomorrow, and continues hot into Wednesday. The culprit, this ridge of high pressure that we're kind of seeing coming in there as we are in the eastern fringe, but bringing along with it some drier conditions and those warmer temperatures as we continue on. So those are going to be things we're going to be watching out for, as many kids this morning have started off their first day of school out in Nampa. We will continue to see the next couple of days that other school districts will start their school year off, and a pretty warm start there as we get into the next couple of days. And it won't be until Thursday that we start to see a dip in some of those temperatures. And what we're going to see kind of on repeat is going to be that sunshine that plays through the next couple of days. So this is just a zoomed out look at what we're seeing here on the Pacific Northwest, as we have heat advisories, an extreme heat warning, and then here in our area we have an extreme heat watch that is in place for tomorrow due to some of those temperatures getting into triple digit territory, almost about 103 degrees in portions of the Treasure Valley, which include Nampa and Caldwell. We've been talking about places here in Southeast Oregon and even out into the Owyhees here in Idaho. So we're expecting some hotter temperatures into tomorrow. And with this, we see a potential increase in some of those heat-related illnesses that we could see come into place. So knowing the symptoms is going to be very important. But as we talk about triple-digit heat, we bring back this triple-digit day tracker. As so far this year, we've seen 4 here in Boise, expecting to add on an extra digit there. So turning that 4 into a 5 as we get on into tomorrow, as we are expecting triple-digit temperatures in the Treasure Valley. So as we continue to see those warmer temperatures today, tomorrow, and into Thursday, we'll start to see a little bit of a change as those temperatures drop into those low 90s, and that's where we're going to start to see some more seasonable-like temperatures to wrap up the work week. So we just got to get through the next couple of days with some of those warm temperatures before we start to see some of those more comfortable warm temperatures to wrap up the week. And as we look at the 7-day forecast, mid 80s will continue on into Tuesday, low 80s Wednesday into Thursday, and then we drop down right into 80 as we get on into Friday, with a bit more of that cloud cover as we get on closer into the weekend. As we look at the 7-day forecast for Twin Falls, those temperatures climb well above the average temperatures, which are normally around the upper 80s, into the mid 90s there for Tuesday, low 90s into Wednesday, and we expect to hit the upper 80s Thursday into Friday, and that'll expand all the way into the weekend with lots of sunshine. And then here in the Treasure Valley, we'll see those temperatures reach triple-digit temperatures into Tuesday, upper 90s into Wednesday, and then we wrap up the work week with some of those low 90s, and then we'll see upper 80s, low 90s as we look into Saturday and into Sunday. But the one thing that you'll notice that looks exactly the same across here in this 7-day forecast is going to be that blazing heat that we're going to be seeing with that sunshine that sticks around through the extended period.
Coming up after a quick break, we're headed to Arizona and Colorado. We'll see you in a few minutes. Welcome back to Weather Out West. I'm Ashley Ruiz. In Arizona, it's the desert Southwest, we know, but they cannot catch a break from the extreme heat. Ginger Jeffries has the details on another extreme heat warning and when the heat will finally let up.
I'm meteorologist Ginger Jeffries with a look at your weather out west and a couple of changes on the horizon for us. We still have extreme heat. Obviously, remember, we broke records last week with highs hitting 118. And while we are going to be above the normal at the beginning of the work week, we do have some active monsoons coming our way midweek. First things first, today and tomorrow, we still have an extreme heat warning for these areas you see in purple. So that extends from Yuma, Lake Havasu, Blythe, everyone seeing temperatures above the normal range, not as hot as last week. So I'm not looking for the 118s, but I am looking for numbers that are going to be at or slightly above about 110 for the metro. So heed the warning. Here's our numbers today. Forecast high in Goodyear, 111. I've got 110 in Surprise, 109 for Scottsdale, 110 for Maricopa, 109 in Queen Creek, 109 in Mesa, and right about 106 in Fountain Hills. So as far as where we should be this time of the year, 105 is a normal range. As you can see, we're elevated. The records are 113. And while I'm calling for highs to be at 110 today, that's not going to break the record. Tomorrow, though, our numbers are going to continue to climb. And I think we're going to be in that vicinity for your Tuesday. So around Arizona on this Monday, we've got daytime highs that are certainly reflective of where we are, the dog days of summer. 116 today in Havasu, about 111 in Yuma, 87 for Flagstaff, 98 in Sedona, 103 in Tucson, and about 100 in Winslow. All right, yesterday you saw that dusty, hazy conditions. Yeah, we're still seeing a little bit of moisture outside, some of that kicking up some dirt, some debris. Beverly and Prescott, one of our 12 News weather watchers, sending in this rain shaft. And hey, wow, look at this in Sedona, capturing a little bit of lightning. So yes, still some strong storms, but most of this is continuing to stay on the perimeter, albeit a little more active than last week. We've got 2s and 3s on the monsoon meter. Doesn't look like anything for the valley, but still we're going to kind of see that haze outside simply because we now have some moisture in the atmosphere. Futurecast showing you some very pocketed, even though a little more collected action to the southeast of the metro after about 4 today. You know, some of the computer models show that we could get some rain starting at 11 in the higher elevations. I think it's going to be a little bit later than the day, but here's the problem with this action. It's having to come down the mountain rather than rise up the mountain, which is really helpful to get that convection, to get that thunderstorm development. So again, 2s and 3s on the monsoon meter. We've got an opportunity later today for higher elevations. I'm talking White Mountains through the rim, primarily on the east side of the state, but this is going to develop as the week goes on. Take a look at this. White Mountain rain. Oh my goodness, we've got 50% coverage by Friday. So clearly the monsoon is going to start activating a little bit later this week. Only about 30-40% chance for the high country by Monday and Tuesday, but then we're up to about 70% coverage on Saturday. And even for Phoenix, we're going to start to see some monsoon development on Tuesday and a better opportunity developing into Friday, tapering off by Saturday. Now, the good news here, anytime I'm talking about monsoon development, you know that means we're going to have some cloud cover and we're going to have some moisture. So temperatures are coming down. Again, it's going to be a warm start to your work week as we're in the upper 80s. Remember, we have weather impact alerts today and tomorrow because of the heat expected in Phoenix. Not as bad as last week, but still on the toasty side. And then as that monsoon moisture moves in, look at your temperatures coming down. And we've got a healthy chance. I'm talking a 40% opportunity of some pop-up storms in the metro by Friday.
Definitely a welcome sight, I would say. Denver is feeling a nice break from the heat. I know it's going to take a couple of days for Phoenix, but I'll get there. Denver, though, they're feeling the break at least for now. Corey Reppenhagen has the details from Denver.
Hey, it's meteorologist Corey Reppenhagen from the 9 News Weather Impact Team in Denver, Colorado. When we talk about the weather in Colorado, it's often split meteorologically by the Rocky Mountains. On the east side of the state, we've seen quite a bit of rain and some big hail. Lately, we've seen some 4-inch hail the last couple of days across the eastern plains. And when you look at the state hail records, something stands out, not just the big numbers. 5 1/4 inch, that's our largest stone. That was in August 8th, 2 years ago, and the previous record, August 13th. So we see some big hail in August as we get some cooler air aloft, a lot of instability. That's all bigger than a grapefruit. So that's what's happening on the eastern side of the state. On the western half of the state, we're dealing with fire weather conditions. We've had our 17th fire weather warning issued so far in the month of August. That breaks a record. Here's the top 6 most fire weather warnings in the month of August for our state. We really don't see fire weather warnings issued too much. When you look at all the warnings issued across our history, July and August are 2 of the lowest. So we're usually dealing with still some greenery and a monsoon season. Monsoon was a bust for us this year. And so we've got big fires, including the Lee Fire, which is now the 6th 100,000 acre fire in Colorado history and still growing. We'll see some fire growth the next couple of days, but likely no fire weather warnings. Here's the temperature forecast as we go into the day. On Monday, we're going to a little bit below 90 degrees, so another break from the heat. This is actually a break from the heat as well, but the humidity levels should be up once again, keeping the firefighters in some decent firefighting conditions. No rain, however, on the Front Range or the Western Slope. As you look at our 7-day forecast in Denver, we've got another little heat wave coming up next week with the highest temperature on Thursday at 98 degrees.
And tonight's the first glimmer, or one of the first glimmers that fall not too far away. It's our last 8 p.m. or later sunset of 2025 on this August the 11th, our last 8 p.m. sunset of 2025. Now, for most of Colorado, this varies. The sunset time varies by 10 to 15 minutes. But for most of the state, generally speaking, this week is the last week of 8 p.m. sunsets of 2025. In Denver specifically, we will not have an 8 p.m. or later sunset again until next May the 7th. Now, sunrise, sunsets, let's get into some more details on that 8 p.m. sunset today. In a week, that'll be at 7:51. In a month, it'll be 7:14. But then it's about kind of 2-3 months out where we really start seeing that dramatic difference. 4:38 sunset on the winter solstice on December the 21st. And we're going to lose 4 hours and 32 more minutes of daylight between now and then. Right now, we are losing approximately 2 minutes and 12 seconds of daylight per day. That number increases once we get kind of into the middle of the fall season. Then it decreases again as we get closer to the solstice. Now, in Denver, our last 7 p.m. or later sunset is on September the 19th, so slightly more than a week out. Our last 6 p.m. or later sunset is on October the 30th, and then our last 5 p.m. or later sunset, November the 1st. Only 2 days later, reason being, of course, daylight savings, so we'll push those clocks back, and the result is that we'll have those 5 p.m. or later sunsets starting in November, only about 2.5 months out. So just a reminder, fall just around the corner, and it's going to start to look that way just a little bit for tonight.
We still have so much more on weather out west on this Monday. After the break, we're headed to California, and later on, 2 topics have been at odds in Oregon throughout the years, native fish and hydropower. But coming up, the good news today in their relationship. Sacramento had a 3-day stretch in the 100s, but that stretch is coming to an end. Here's Rob Carlmark with the Northern and Central California forecast.
Hello, I am ABC 10 meteorologist Rob Carlmark out here in Northern California, and we've got some pretty hot weather. Now, let's be honest, it is August in Northern California. It gets hot. The coastal areas have some different kind of weather. Also, we have different elevations. The foothills are right around 1,000 feet to 4,000 to 5,000 feet, and then the Sierra, what we refer to as the Sierra or the crest, goes all the way up to 8,000 feet. So in some places 9,000. Once you get to Central Sierra, it can go up to 14,000 feet. So we've got a lot of different variations, and of course you're going to get different weather, mostly related to how close you are to the ocean or how high you are. So I'm going to split things up a little bit later on, but I would say where we should start is just reflecting on July one more time, because something happened so far in August that didn't happen at all in July. You could see how hot it was last year. Average high was 98 degrees. We had 16 days 100 or hotter. This last July, we only had one day, and that was the fourth day at triple digit territory. The problem is that August was starting off pretty nicely. We saw some average days, then a little bit below, and then the heat just switched on. And then we've been looking at above average temperatures, and then 3 days in a row of triple-digit heat. Now, that makes it 7 total, but 3 in a row is something we just simply have not seen so far this summer. A rare thing, but a good thing. What did not come along with that, thank goodness, is the air quality is still in pretty good shape for Northern California. The skies are clear, and when you look at the numbers for the fire seasons, this was recently compiled. They don't do this every day. The 5-year average is about 250,000 acres. Last year, we saw more acres burn, but we've seen a lot of activity in Southern California, so these numbers are surely going to rise. We've already had more than 5,000 fires, so it's not as if we haven't had a big fire season. We have, but a lot of this has been Central Southern California and also in more remote areas. There's been evacuations, there's been some issues here and there, but it hasn't been too bad. The problem is that most of the smoke and haze has been remaining there or moving over to Arizona. They had really bad air quality over the weekend in Phoenix. With that said, sky conditions, again, looking pretty good everywhere you look. We do have some heat advisories elsewhere. Far Northern California, over the hill in Nevada, also Central Southern California. But we've been avoiding that for the most part because even though we're triple digits, we can get much hotter than that. We can go 105, 108, 110, and we've been staying away from that. Lots of people enjoyed the reservoirs that we have. They're big, huge bodies of water created for flood control and also recreation and water that we need in the long, hot summer because it does not dry in general between June and about October. Here's our temperatures. You could see for most of the places on this Monday, we're either going to be triple digits for the valley floor. We're looking at solid 90s for the foothills, and the high Sierra is going to be a mix of 80s and low 90s. For those places without a lot of air conditioning, that is hot. It absolutely does feel hot. Then once you get to more of the southern end of the Central Valley, places like Fresno or Bakersfield, it truly is hot, and that's why they have heat advisories for those locations. Along the coast, notice that it goes green. Ocean temperatures anywhere from the 50s in the Bay Area up to the 60s for the Santa Barbara Channel. And then you get to the Bay Area, nice mix of temperatures, 60s, 70s, and 80s. Over the hill, it's all 90s when you get to Vacaville. And then far Northern California can get really hot. Places like Redding, 110 degrees. For the Sacramento area, we're going to be right around 100. Some of the suburbs a little bit above 100. So it's going to be hot for sure. But what we're not seeing, mountain showers and thunderstorms in the mountains. And overall, our temperatures are coming down as we're looking at mid-90s by Tuesday and then finally settling into the upper 80s where we should stay all the way through this upcoming weekend.
Now let's head to Southern California. Vanessa Paz has the San Diego forecast now.
Well, happy Monday, everyone. I'm CBS 8 meteorologist Vanessa Paz out in San Diego, California. It's a big day across the region. A lot of kiddos heading back to school, and the heat will be on repeat as we kick off a new work week. Let's go ahead and take a quick look at the last couple of weeks for Ramona because it has been very hot. In fact, we were near record-breaking heat last week. It looks like temperatures soared last Thursday, and we're continuing to see an uptick in those highs, and we will continue to do so as we kick off a new work week, especially when it comes to interior parts of the county. 90s will be the trend as we get into your Monday, Tuesday before things noticeably cool off towards the second half of the week. All right, National Weather Service. Originally, these were both set to expire last Friday night. They were very well extended into the weekend, and they will follow us at least through Tuesday night for some areas. But the mountain areas will actually see that heat advisory ending finally tonight. Again, this could very well change. It could get extended until Tuesday, but as of right now, the heat advisory for those coral colored areas, also known as the mountains, set to expire later on this evening, while the extreme heat warning for the desert areas will finally expire at Tuesday night. As we take a look at daytime highs, pretty comparable as yesterday, or from yesterday, is what we're likely going to see this afternoon. We'll be in the high 70s for areas like Oceanside, mid 70s on tap from Carlsbad all the way down to the South Bay. For interior parts of the county, especially those neighborhoods that hug the 15 corridor, from Fallbrook all the way down to Escondido. Highs will once again be in the 80s. We'll top out close to 90 degrees for neighborhoods like Escondido. Low 90s on tap for Ramona, close to 90 in Palomar Mountain, near 90 in Julian, and we'll top out in the triple digits again, anywhere between 110, 111 for Borrego Springs as well as Ocotillo Wells. All right, so here's what we can look forward to as we kick off a new work week. It'll be hot. A hot start to the week. You'll notice that, especially if you're hanging along the inland valleys. Noticeable cooling, but not too noticeable until the time we get to the end of the week. Thursday and Friday is when I'm seeing the most noticeable changes when it comes to those daytime highs. And it will be cloudier for the valley areas. So every morning that marine layer is going to spill a little more inland and inland as we progress through the work week. So here's what's happening aloft. This is at 500 millibars. We have that ridge of high pressure well to our west now, just offshore, the center of it at least. And then we have this trough of low pressure. So high pressure is going to continue to weaken, and we'll actually notice that cooling, as I mentioned, especially towards the second half of the week as that ridge weakens. All right, so I'm going to fast forward this forecast radar here and notice how we have some instability just to our southeast. Some of that moisture could make its way into San Diego County, but as of right now, it's looking like the humidity, as far as that thick humidity, it will stay out of the county. But again, we are seeing a very slight chance, and when I say slight, I mean anywhere between 5 to 7% of scattered showers, especially for the mountain areas. Here's that wildfire smoke that we're continuing to keep our eye on from the wildfires burning in San Luis Obispo and Santa Barbara counties. If you're susceptible to those respiratory issues, just make sure that you're minimizing time outside. For the coastal areas, subtle daily changes will stay in this range of the mid to low 70s all the way through the weekend. And as I mentioned, the noticeable changes for the inland valleys won't really happen until the time we get to Thursday and Friday. It's still going to be warm Tuesday and Wednesday in the mid to low 80s, but in comparison to what we experienced this past weekend, temperatures are going to drop off a bit. We'll stay in that range closer to the norm, to where we should be for this time of the year. By the time we get to the weekend, we'll hit highs in the high 70s, low 80s, and then we are tracking a little bit of a warm up returning for the start of next week. The mountain areas will be in the low 90s, high 80s up until about Thursday, and then back into the mid 80s by the weekend.
Julie Martin has the national forecast for you after a quick break. Welcome back. The summer heat isn't the only weather impact our nation is facing. Julie Martin breaks down the weather alerts in effect in today's national forecast.
Well, we are expecting some heavy rain today in places like the Plains, the Midwest, and in through the Deep South. Also, a few severe storms from the northern plains to the southern plains, and that heat is building as we head into places like the Ohio Valley, the Mid-Atlantic, and the Northeast with those 90s. Speaking of 90s, take a look here at the west. We'll start here in Portland, 99 degrees today, so way above average. A lot of heat there for you in Portland. That whole area, really the Pacific Northwest, is going to stay really hot. Spokane at 96, Boise, you'll be at 97. Sacramento, almost the triple digits for you, and then heading into Phoenix, of course, with those triple digits. Denver, you'll be at 83 today. We'll see the 90s across the Lone Star State, and then the eastern half of the U.S. really does start to warm up. We're going to see those 90s stretching from places like the Mid-South into the Midwest, all the way up into the Northeast and New England. Portland, Maine at 90 degrees today. Hartford at 92. We'll see those 80s in D.C. Cleveland topping out around 90 degrees today. And then those 80s and rainy conditions from Charlotte back down into Atlanta. So here are those watches and warnings, and these are some flood concerns for the day today. We're looking at places like Wichita down into Oklahoma, so the southern plains here, maybe southern Wisconsin. And then as we head over the next 48 hours, it does look like we're going to get plenty of rainfall in places like South Carolina. Really, the Deep South is going to stay pretty soggy over the next several days. Atlanta, you'll see the rain, as well as Knoxville. And then heading into the Midwest, we could see a couple of inches of rainfall over the next several days as well. Places like Des Moines, Iowa, northern Illinois, then back down in through Oklahoma and northern Texas. The severe threat is minimal today. It's a level 1 out of 5, so that's a marginal threat. but of at least maybe some isolated storms developing once we head into northern Minnesota. Minneapolis, not out of the question. You could see some storms here. Also North Dakota, and then heading into the southern plains from Oklahoma to the Texas Panhandle. Hail and damaging winds would be the primary threats, along with some heavy downpours. All right, our tropical outlook looks like this. Looks very active, but the good news is these two areas in yellow here only have about a 10% chance of development, and no impacts are expected to the United States. Now, the one in red you see off the African coast, this one does have a really good chance of developing. The National Hurricane Center is actually giving that a 90% chance of development, and there's a really good chance this could become a hurricane as well. The hurricane would be named Aaron. So we are going to keep a very close eye on this as it makes its way across the Atlantic over the next several days, approaching perhaps closer to the United States. Whether or not there will be any impacts remains to be seen. Here are those regional forecasts. Again, hot in the west, we'll see 98 in Sacramento, 110 in Phoenix, 83 in Denver. We've got the 90s all across the Lone Star State. Here in the southeast, we're starting to see temperatures creep back into the 90s, and then we'll see that rain from Atlanta in through New Orleans, in Charlotte and Tampa. Heading into the northeast, 91 in Buffalo. We'll see 88 in D.C., 90s in Indy, and 84 with sunny skies in Minneapolis.
Thanks, Julie. I actually have an update from the National Hurricane Center this morning. Tropical Storm Aaron formed in the Atlantic as of this morning. The Atlantic has been rather quiet compared to previous years, but now through October is the peak of hurricane season. The climatological peak for the Atlantic hurricane season is September 10th. Here's a look at the track, the latest track from the National Hurricane Center. You see it's way out in the open Atlantic, so right off the coast of Africa. And typically this time of year, this is the main development region. This is typically where we get a wave train of disturbed weather, some thunderstorms rolling off the coast of Africa, and then they take their long journey across the main development region. And before they usually get to the Windward and Leeward Islands in the Caribbean, heading into the Caribbean, that's where they typically have that energy, low wind shear, and lots of heat to develop. And it is forecast to become a Cat 3 hurricane, but you notice that cone of uncertainty gets very large heading into the weekend. There's so much time to watch whether this is going to impact land or if eventually it might turn out to sea. But this one, especially this time of year, may not. But once again, plenty of time to watch how that unfolds. Here's a look at the Atlantic storm names so far. Not very active, as I mentioned. This is Atlantic. You see Aaron, but then there's still plenty of hurricane season left. Now, NOAA's update calls for 13 to 18 named storms, 2 to 5 major hurricanes of those, and these numbers have actually gone down a little bit. Meanwhile, the Eastern Pacific, there is Hurricane Henriette, and the Eastern Pacific has actually been considerably more active. You see even stronger thunderstorms. Next name on the list is Juliet, and the update still calls for at least 12 to 18 named storms. We have lots to talk about coming up after the break. We still have that one story I was telling you about down in Oregon in the General Electric, how his Confederated Tribes of the Warm Springs are celebrating a win. KGW 8's meteorologist Chris McGinnis tells us how this year's return of steelhead salmon is showing some real promise for a once struggling fish population.
A breakthrough on the Deschutes River.
We're very excited for the kind of first time since we've started this decades-long reintroduction program to be meeting our adult passage goals.
Megan Hill is a fish biologist and manages the Hydro Environmental Program for Portland General Electric.
And we've seen over the past couple years sort of incremental progress, like we had 50 fish and then we had 130 and then we had 160.
This run, 950 returning steelhead.
This is very notable and exciting.
Steelhead are returning in numbers not seen since dams blocked their path in the 1960s, thanks to a major collaboration, including the Confederated Tribes of Warm Springs.
Rebec Dam is right here.
Okay.
So it's the lowermost dam. Pelton Dam is here, and then you got Round Butte Dam up here, which makes Lake Delich Nook.
Lyman Jim is the fisheries manager for the tribe. The dam complex is one of PGE's largest hydropower assets, generating about 500 megawatts of electricity. The Confederated Tribes of Warm Springs is one of the few tribal entities in the United States licensed to operate a hydroelectric dam.
It shows that we can regulate ourselves, and it gives us an opportunity to be selling power.
Hydropower is one of the tribe's largest moneymakers and provides for a host of tribal priorities, including infrastructure and school funding. The dams, however, eliminated runs of native fish.
When the dams were built, they attempted to do fish passage, and it didn't work out as well as they thought. They could get adults upstream to go spawn in the areas, but then they could not capture the juveniles coming back down to complete the life cycle.
Years of collaborative work between PGE, the tribes, and partnering agencies are finally showing some promise.
So to be at 950 fish, we're right there where we need to be.
It would possibly start a self-sustaining run.
Thanks so much for joining us today. Be sure to join us tomorrow for our next Weather Out West.